You know what? This is February the 1st, and boy, are we ready for this on a day like this. I'm a little concerned about the groundhog tomorrow. I don't know if he's iced over or not, but there's nothing like summer dreaming. So looking forward to our plant sale. This is our 30th year for our plant sale. How awesome is that? So we are going to be setting up. Just like last year, we have annuals by the flat, the accents, the annuals in the 4-inch pots, perennials, herbs, milkweeds, ornamental grasses, fruits, and vegetables. And those will all be on our cart. Okay, we're going to start at the very top here. And I am going to try to clear my view screen here just a minute. I hope I don't mess it up. Let's see if I can get this to go off of my screen. You are screen sharing. Let's see what I can do. Stop share. All right. Let's start off in our 4-inch annual. So let's start off with our flats, actually. And I'm going to go over these briefly, but it's fun because these are our new things that we have. This is an extreme mix impatiens. And the numbers that I have on the screen are the ones that you can coordinate with the list that Brian sent out today. This is an extreme tango mix. And these are a compact and uniform plant with 2.5, so it's a large bloom, 2.5 inches. It's an improved variety. The colors are supposed to be more vivid than they've ever been. It continuously blooms, ever blooming. The heat tolerance is a lot better on these guys for impatiens. They get about 9 to 11 inches tall and about 8 to 10 inches wide. These do well if you deadhead them, believe it or not. They're kind of like the Dazzler series we had before. The other one is Extreme Tango Mix, which you notice is a little bit different colors, going more to the orange. And then the Extreme Utopia Mix is going to go more into the pinks. Very, very nice for impatiens. Okay. I am not forwarding forward here, so let's see what's going on. There we go. Okay, this is Salvia, a brand new one this year called Victoria Blue. This is in a flat of 36 also. It is a multiple deep blue blooms on a single plant. The stems are very spiky, a little bit more so than on usually on Salvias. It's got a really, really deep green foliage. It is excellent with heat tolerance. So this is a salvia that's going to do well when we get our hot summer. It holds its color. Some of the salvias fade out, but this one has been bred to hold its color. It's about 18 to 24 inches tall and a full 18 inches wide. Another flat that's new this year is the Inca Periwinkle, Sunstorm Rose with an eye. It is a large bloom, very upright. It does have a better mounding growth habit than before. It's heat and weather tolerant, heat and cool weather tolerant. So you can plant these a little bit earlier. We do know that we wait to plant our vincas until a little bit later because we want the soil to be warm. This is a very early bloomer, and the flowers are very uniform, about 8 to 10 inches tall, so a good size. The biggest thing, of course, with this Sunstorm Rose is that you don't want to overwater. It is a patented variety, so it really combats Phytophthora or that root rot. So it is a great one to look into. Of course, one of my favorite flowers is the Xenia Profusion. This year, our new one is the Double Sunrise Mix. It is in the flats again. And by the way, this one is really, really good to broadcast in large numbers. So if you get a flat, it's great for pollinators because they can see it from the air. The bright double blooms are very, very good with real hot temperatures, and it's also very drought tolerant. Matter of fact, they do the best in the heat. This is a good cut flower. You want to remove your leaves when you put it in your vase because they cause the water to go rancid, but they last for a long time as a cut flower. About 14 to 18 inches tall by 20 by 24 inches wide. So just a really, really nice zinnia. And of course, with all zinnias, you don't want to get their leaves wet. Okay, another one that is not new this year, but it's one of my favorites, what I always like to promote, is this Xenia Profusion Fire. Orange colors are very, very popular as a pollinator plant. You know, for pollinators, they notice this color well. This one does good. It always has done well. It is not only a great pollinator plant, but it's very user-friendly. They say that zinnias are the easiest annual to grow. So if you're not good with annuals, start with zinnias. Any soil type will be good for this one. It tolerates heat. And not only does it tolerate it, but it thrives in heat. You do have to have it in well-drained soil. And if you pinch back the stems early on, then they'll branch and get thicker. And it is no deadheading required. So the profusion is always wonderful. New one, Zahara mix. Zahara is very, very similar to the profusion. They're both hybrids, and they're just brought about from different Xenia mixes. The Elegans Xenia is what gives them their large bloom. This Zahara mix has a superior disease resistance. So that stuff on the leaves that we worry about with the mildew will not be so apt here on the Zahara. It loves the heat again. You can pinch back the stems on this one also. It grows about the same as the profusion. Mass planting is wonderful, and it is virtually pest-free, about 12 to 18 inches tall. And Xenia, by the way, for those of you who have deer do not like Xenia. So Xenias are also safe for all animals. So if your dog gets in your Xenias, or your cat or a deer, they do not like to eat them. So if they do, they're safe, but deer are repelled by Xenias. Really, really good idea. Okay, let's move on to our 4-inch accents greenery. This is a new one called Frogfruit. Frogfruit is the Phyla nudiflora. It is a perennial herb. It's a ground cover. Its original name was fog fruit instead of frog, but it just evolved because people thought they were saying frog. Because when it blooms in the summer, in the early morning, it looks like fog on top of the branches of the greenery of the ground cover. It is from the verbena family. It's an excellent ground cover. It stays evergreen in mild winters. So if you've got a bare spot in the garden, it's a good place to put it. It spreads vigorously. So let me say that frog fruit is a native. It attracts pollinators all summer long. Butterflies love it. But it is a vigorous spreader. So you want to make sure it's containerized within one garden bed or one area, because otherwise I do understand that frog fruit will cover up your grandchildren during they stay out in the yard. Okay. It also is a good nectar plant. As I mentioned, it does great not only as a ground cover, but in hanging baskets and in overflowing on walls. It's attractive over boulders in the garden. So this is going to be a real easy one to use as a ground cover. And remember, in our gardens, in sustainable gardening, we want to cover the ground. We don't want to just use mulch only, but ground covers are great to use in our gardens. In the wintertime, the leaves are green, but they have a little red or purplish tint, so they're very, very pretty. 3 to 6 inches tall, and it blooms with white and red and pink all summer. And you don't want to mow over it if you put it in the yard, because the blooms will not come back for several years. So this is not one you want to mow. Cardinal Vine, this year also. Cardinal Vine, or the cypress vine, is the Ipomoea huamaclit. It is a pollinator plant. It's sun or part shade. Grows about 6 to 15 feet. It will cover almost anything, blooming from June through October. It is just a really, really pretty scarlet red. It's called Texas Star, or Star of Texas sometimes. It's drought tolerant, but also it'll tolerate wet soils. So that's very interesting. It does like it to be moderately moist all the time. It attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. It's a quick grower for covering. It covers things well. It does need a support. So it's not one that's going to support itself. It is pretty limp. So you want to get a support. And even though it's not a perennial, it does self-seed a little bit, but not extreme. And I'm always going to tell you that, because with native plants, which are so wonderful in our gardens because they do so well, they're so drought tolerant, some are invasive. And I always want to tell you that, because I want you to be prepared for exactly the right plant in the right place. A new coleus we're presenting this year is the Wizard Scarlet. It is a 4-inch pot annual. Very, very deep red foliage, and it's trimmed in that beautiful pale green that just makes it pop. It's a great contrast plant with other things in a container, because it just has that pop and that good background color. It is a really good mounding upright plant. Its habit will stay very, very nice and tidy. It prefers shade, but it will tolerate part shade and some heat, but you want to keep it more understory. It likes moist soil, 12 to 14 inches tall and about the same wide. It's good and very, very pretty with impatiens and with other Ipomea, which is the sweet potato vine. So a good one to use in containers. Wizard Scarlet. The coleus trailing burgundy is another really, really nice, very, very pretty coleus. It has little round burgundy leaves with the bold green edge around the outside, so it does pop. It likes part sun to sun, and it is vigorous to 30 inches. So this is going to be one that's a lot like the sweet potato vine. It's going to grow well for you, and it's not going to be quite as vigorous as that sweet potato vine would be in some of your containers. You want to plant it when the night temperatures are above 60 degrees. Good thing to remember on this one, it does not like cool weather. Wizard Sun Velvet Red, isn't that lovely? Just a very, very nice, appealing color to the eye. This is a sun coleus. It tolerates sun and heat and humidity, and it does unusually well in these areas for coleus. So if we ever had any, really hot, humid weather in the summer here, this would be a good one. About 12 to 14 inches tall, about 10 to 12 inches wide. The velvety red and that leaf highlight of light green is a real pop in the garden, especially if you have other plants in the foreground with it. Another impatiens that we are looking at is that extreme orange. This is in the 4-inch pot. This is a shade plant, of course. It has really, really dark green foliage, which makes that extreme orange really, really pop out, as well as that red color. The blooms are about 2.5 inches wide, and the stems on this one are short and thick, so they support that bloom upright, which is nice. We're always looking for that in an impatiens. The growth is very uniform. That's what they're working toward, and a lot of the hybridized and the new cultivars is uniform growth and upright. This is a good one to make a special note that you want to keep it fertilized monthly and deadheaded, about 9 to 11 inches high. Impatiens. One of my very favorites, the marigold. The marigold in this case is the Inca, and it is a sun plant, of course. It is good for pollinators. This has the really, really large African marigold blooms, about 3 to 3.5 inch blossoms on this one. On the orange, they're very, very dark orange. On the yellow, they're really, really sunny. So they're really bright in the garden. Very compact, large blooms. The double blooms bloom almost all summer long, about 12 to 14 inches tall and wide. So it's a good sized plant. And this was termed by many of the experts as America's favorite marigold because it is an African marigold. So it's going to be a little larger. It likes at least at the minimum 6 hours of sun, regular water, and deadheading. The Inca series of marigold. New one. Morning Glory vine. We really haven't done a vine before. This particular one is called Heavenly Blue, and it truly is just lovely. I mean, the colors on it comes on in blue, but it also has some other magenta or pink flowers. The throat sometimes stays pink. Has heart-shaped leaves, which makes it really, really pretty. The azure blue of that trumpet-shaped flower is very, very special. It's got that white and yellow throat, and the flowers come out, of course, in the morning. There are new flowers on this one every single day. It's very quick growing. I grow this personally, and I keep it contained. I remember one of the master gardeners being afraid of a morning glory vine, but this one is very, very well kept. It stays in its place. I've never had it creeping anywhere outside of the area where I have it growing to cover up some air conditioning in the front of the yard. This one also is a good one because of its climbing habit. It'll cover anything that you want to cover. Grows about 10 feet tall, stays about 3 to 5 feet wide. It self-seeds some, but it is very, very minuscule to do that. They're easy to pull up. It attracts butterflies and hummers, and it is disease-free, and they say pest-free. But you guys know how I feel about holes in the leaves, that's a good thing, that our plants are doing something good to feed insects, beneficial insects. And this one does get some holes in the leaves at the end of the season. And I think that's a good thing because some little caterpillar is eating and chowing down. Heavenly Blue. A wonderful Penta that we're showing this year is the Penta Heirloom Red. And it is about 3 feet tall. This one is a pollinator magnet. if you group these like in 3s or 5s, the pollinators, as they fly over, they notice that red color, especially the hummers, which we try to attract. The cluster is like a cheery little star-shaped blossom. It's very, very pretty in the garden, aesthetically for us as well as the pollinators. It's always in bloom. I've never seen this plant not be in bloom. And even though it is a tropical, it just thrives all summer long here, just like it belonged here. So it's the Penta Heirloom Red. This is a favorite of ours, of course. Last year we sold Porterweed in a few colors. This year we have really, really expanded our colors. We're doing blue in the Porterweed, or what some people call Stachytarfida, or also it's called Brazilian tea or false vervain. You'll hear lots of words for this because it's a favorite of many. Some call it red snakeberry, some call it velvet berry. It's in the verbena family. The little blooms are less than an inch in size, but you see that they make a cluster or a seam there. And the flowers are axillary, which means they grow right in the axil of the leaf at the top. So it's always got a lot of blossoms. We're featuring the red, the purple, the lavender, the coral, and the blue. This is a must. Everybody needs at least 1 or 2 of these. Here's the other colors in the purple and the red. Really, really attractive. And of course, we know that red attracts hummingbirds. And this little hummer is actually on a purple one, so go figure. But anyway, it's a good plant to have, Porterweed. Salvia coccinea is one that we actually sold last year, but I wanted to mention it again because it did so well in my garden last year. It is called the Scarlet Sage, and look at those blossoms. It just blooms continually. I did head mine partially back, like a third of the plant, so that I'll have continual bloom coming all the time. It's also called a blood sage. It likes sun. It attracts pollinators. It's native to Texas in zone 9. So here it's going to be an annual, but it gets so big, it's almost like a pineapple sage or another one in that variety because it gets so large. I had mine in a container and it did great. You want to trim and deadhead this back to keep it bushy, like I said. And if you do parts at a time, then you'll always have blossoms for the hummers. It continually blooms all summer long. This is a great sage, Scarlet Sage, Salvia coccinea. The Salvia Sage, which is brand new this year for us, we're featuring the Ember's Wish, the Roman Red, and Wendy's Wish. I have personally grown these, and I think they're fabulous. They get really, really large. They attract bees and butterflies and hummers. They get about 3 to 4 feet tall and about as wide, so you got to allow room for these. I didn't allow enough room, and they really, really filled up around my budlias and some other things, but give some room for this because they look good and they hold their shape. The Ember's Wish is a dark burgundy stem. It has a very long blooming season. It is a woody-based annual, so it'll get woody, and you'll think, man, maybe this will come back. But I have not ever had that happen. If you do, that would be great. It blooms this fiery orange coral, and it has a papery little dusty rose bract around the flower, which you can see in the picture a little, and it just makes it so much prettier. The Roman Red, of course, is a 3 by 3, a little bit smaller than the Ember's Wish. It's good in large containers. It grows like the black and blue salvia. So you know that shape and form for this one. This one is a little bit more compact. That's why we say it's like the black and blue. And it's just red, and it's a pretty red. The last one is Wendy's Wish. This is probably my favorite. It is a magenta pink, and actually this is the Pantone color of the year, the Viva Magenta on this Wendy's Wish. It is a kind of a dark red stem. It has a citrus scent. And I just think this is a fabulous plant. And again, it's going to be an annual, but it's so big. I still have the woody stalk in the gardens even now, so it holds up really well. Salvia, Red Hot Sally, number 2. Don't you love that name? That'd be fun just to have this plant, just to tell people you've got it. Yeah, that's Red Hot Sally. It is a 4-inch pollinator plant, likes the sun, is a good pollinator, very long-lasting performance. It's not going to stop blooming on you. The dark red spikes and the dark green foliage just pop in the garden, as you can see from the center picture. On the right-hand side, you see it with a blue. Looks very, very nice with blue also. I love a blue garden. This is a very short and full salvia, as you can see from the left-hand picture. It gets about 10 to 12 tall and 6 to 8 wide. And of course, it's bees, butterflies, and hummer friendly. Tithonia, we've sold this before, but I wanted to talk about the Rotundifolia Mexican sunflower because it's so fabulous. This is so good for pollinators, likes full sun because it's from the aster family. And since it's called Mexican sunflower, we know why it wants to be in the sun. It's native to Mexico and Central America, so you know it likes it hot and dry. The flowers are kind of an orangey red, 3-inch bloom. They bloom from midsummer to fall, so it takes them a while to grow up. They are very fast growing, but you want to put them at the back of the garden or in the center of a bed because they get large. They also do really well next to a fence because you can prop them up there with some string, which is good for them because they get large. Sometimes they need staking. If you have a lot of wind, they may, but they're pretty sturdy, and they like a lean soil, like many of our native plants do here. They like a lean soil, and if you deadhead, they will continue to bloom. Great for pollinators. Tithonia. This is a very pretty Vinca periwinkle called Mediterranean Pure White. And what stands out about the Pure White is that it's so darn white. It has a little bit of a yellow eye in the center, but this just pops. It's great to have in a darker place because as you see with this blue, this azure pot here, it just makes it just jump out at you. Very pretty color. It is a clear white bloom. If you can pinch this back for fuller appearance and for bushiness, it's about 4 to 6 inches tall, but it spreads like 20 to 30 inches. The Mediterranean red is very pretty because it has that really striking red color with a small white eye. So that is another thing that makes it pop. You can sit on that right container. Very attractive. We have sold this one last year also, but this is so cool. I was so impressed with this one, this Vinca periwinkle tattoo blueberry, because it is a pollinator plant. It actually is a periwinkle that attracts pollinators. And I didn't know that they would do that, but it's got a very unique blue with darker center. And it looks like on the actual bloom itself that it's been airbrushed, like with a black paintbrush. So it's a really unique. And if you look at each petal, it just makes it just be very interesting for the garden. And don't you love that color? Vinca periwinkle. And of course, they like sunshine. Another zinnia we're selling this year in a 4-inch pot is the Magellan Scarlet and the Magellan Yellow. Very nice in a double zinnia. This was an All-American Selection Variety 4 out of 5 pointer, which means it has a lot of good attributes. It has a large, colorful flower. It's very heat and drought tolerant, about 12 to 18 inches tall. So that makes it very nice. It makes a statement in the garden. 10 to 12 inches wide. It's a great filler plant in the center of a container. Very nice to just have that vivid color with other colors to, you know how we talked last year on the color wheel. You can put colors close together on the color wheel that look good, or put opposite colors like yellows and purples. But this is a very nice container plant for that. This one is special because it has a secondary branching growth over the first growth. So you don't have to deadhead this one, and it continually blooms. So a new series, Magellan in the zinnia. This is a color that we have not handled in the Profusion before. We know the Profusion series is an All-American Selection winner, of course, but it is also one that is so pollinator friendly. And look in that basket. Don't you love that? It is so friendly, loves full sun. This zinnia is the only white zinnia that's pure white. If you notice, if you've ever bought seed packages, you get kind of that creamy white. This is the only one, they say, that is pure white. It has a 2.5-inch daisy-like flower. It has a very good proven resistance against mildew and powdery mildew, especially in the fall when we start cooling down. About 10 to 12 inches tall. And this one was so popular, it also received the European Fleuro Select Gold Medal in Europe. So this is a really popular if you like white zinnias. Angelonia, we're very familiar with Angelonia. It's a Oklahoma proven pollinator plant. It loves sun. It is sometimes just looking, when you look out over it, it looks very delicate with these daisy flowers, but this is a tough plant. It just grows and takes the heat and takes the sun. About 16 to 20 inches tall, the Serena blue, very, very pretty color. It has many flowered stalks on one plant. And this is interesting because this plant does not have pollen or nectar, so to speak, but it has floral oils, which is what some of our native bees require. And the floral oil is put out on the tiny hairs on the Angelonia serena blue. So very, very cool for feeding some of our native bees, which definitely are something to give special attention to. New plant this year we haven't carried before. I know I saw this on our garden tour last year in Angie's garden. It's a Tianthus straw flower. And it is, if you've never seen a straw flower, it is so cool because when you touch it, it feels like it's fake because it feels like straw. This is called Dreamtime Yellow, and the color yellow, I don't know about you, but there's nothing prettier than a yellow pop in the garden. So happy. It can handle really cool springs, cool weather in the spring, or it can handle light frost in the fall. So you can put this one out a little earlier to get some of that sunshine going out in your yard. The blooms are very shiny, and it looks good in baskets, of course, and in containers. It likes full sun. It likes well-drained soil, maybe because of its succulent nature. It's about 10 to 12 inches tall and the same wide. And of course, rock Tianthus straw flower is going to need full sun. Some sun coleus. Everybody likes to put their coleus in the sun. This year, we're presenting a new sun coleus called the Flamethrower Habanero. And it has if you look at this container with this color, it just really, really has a pretty appeal, very aesthetically pleasing. It's a kind of an unusual color in the Flamethrower Habanero. It is fiery orange leaves, and it has just a touch of purple on the center and the edge. So that is really cool. I like that. Flamethrower Salsa Roja is a burgundy red color. We have a lot of burgundies, but this one particular one is very vigorous if you like that color. About 12 to 18 inches tall. Its hardiness goes down to 38 degrees. So that's one to think of that, will be perpetuated in the fall when we start cooling down. It has an upright growth habit. It tolerates some shade. It's very compact, and it is very late to flower. You know how we have to deadhead many of our coleus? The Flamethrower series puts on blossoms, if any, very late in the season. Our next sun coleus is the Inferno. Don't you love that color? It really, really pops. It is about 14 to 28 inches, so it's going to be a little bit bigger than the other two flamethrowers we just spoke about. It is very tall and wide, and the color is just, I just think it's beautiful. I love that color. Okay, let's look at some geranium. This is an interspecific geranium, which means it's a cross between the zonal geranium and the ivy geranium. And this one's called Calliope Rose Mega Splash. What a name to impress your friends in the garden. Now just let that roll off your tongue. It is a sun or part sun. It's a 4.5 inch pot this time. The blooms are really, really big, like the zonal geranium. But the plant has a little trailing habit like the ivy, so very interesting to use. Sometimes the trailers have smaller blossoms, so this one's going to be in the Calliope series. It's going to have bigger blossoms. It likes full sun like many geraniums in the morning, but a little afternoon shade in Oklahoma is not going to hurt its feelings. It likes to be deadheaded, about 12 to 14 inches tall, so it's not going to be one of the real over demanding ones, but it's going to, as it drapes down over the side like an ivy, it's just very, very outstanding in a pot or a container. Calliope. Okay, Cardonia. This is the axle flower. And don't you love this name? Golden Freckles. I think that's so cool. It's about 2 to 5 inches tall, so it's going to be more compact, about 16 to 20 inches wide. It loves sun, and it's a pollinator with these little bitty, which is good for some of our native bees also. It has opposite green leaves. It produces bright yellow, happy flowers at each leaf axil. So again, it's going to have a lot of blooms because at each axil where the leaf meets the stem, it's going to put out a blossom. It's very, very vigorous, and even though it's considered an annual, I've had it come back now about 3 or 4 years. So in the garden, it depends on, right plant and right place at Cardonia. Mexican heather. How many people have grown the Cuphea hyssophilia? This particular variety is called Allison, and it is just, I love this color. I love it when it goes more blue. Sometimes it'll go a little purple, but the blue color is wonderful. In the Kufia, they go about 14 to 16 inches tall, about same wide. It's also called a false heather. You know, we can't grow heather here. I once bought one at a big box store thinking I could. Heather does not last our summers. So this is really cool if you like the heather look. It has the dainty purple tubular flowers with a very pink throat. And the foliage is very glossy green, heat tolerant, drought tolerant, of course. It's sometimes semi-trailing. It'll kind of lean over the garden. And it has shown to be, the growth habit is just continual in the summer. It doesn't ever die back. It just continues and continues in the Mexican heather. Pretty color. Asters. Oh my goodness. Getting into our perennial plants. Asters, of course, are one of our keystone plants here in Oklahoma, which means they are a great pollinator plant. This particular one in the aromatic, in the Symphytrocum oblongifolium, that's a fun word to know. It is a very late bloomer. So it'll bloom in the fall. You know, you want to have continual bloom from spring, summer, and fall for our pollinators and our birds who also get seeds off our plants. But this one is 2 weeks after its cousin, the New England aster. So this is going to provide for those really last minute monarch butterflies coming through and a lot of our native butterflies before they go into winter dormancy. It's the last source sometimes of food before winter comes, actually. It's very frost tolerant, which it would have to be such a late bloomer. Grows about 1 to 3 feet tall. It's a little smaller than some of the other asters, so you want to give this some room so that the other asters don't, you know, just overburden it and cover it up. So plant it away from other things. As you see, it's a pollinator. The bees love asters as well as butterflies. And when you crush the leaves, it's called aromatic because when you crush the leaves, it smells like a balsam lavender. So, I mean, who doesn't like to walk through the garden and have things brush against and have a, you know, an odorous example at the same time as seeing the floriferous pretty. So, good thing to plant, asters. Baptisia australis. We sold this last year. Very, very popular. This is a wonderful native plant. It comes in a quart, as all our perennials do. It is pollinator friendly. It's sometimes called the blue wild indigo or the blue false indigo. It's not invasive as a native at all. You see the big seed pods on the right. They're very, very pretty also, even after the blooms. But it is not invasive, does not reseed readily. It's in the legume family, which is kind of scary sometimes because we know legumes can be a little bit invasive, but this one is not. Very, very nice. It's a perennial herb. It's native to central and the eastern U.S. It was the 2010 Perennial Plant Association Plant of the Year, so that's very cool. It blooms late spring into early summer, and the actual shrub stays vase or vase shaped. So it's really, really a nice one to put among other perennials. It is sometimes there are nativars or plants that have been made cultivars off of the Baptisia, and sometimes they don't have any pollen. So you want to stick to the names that we know. This blue false indigo is a great one. Gets about 3 feet tall. We do have a new Baptisia this year, a different genus and a different species. Actually, it's called the yellow wild indigo. Very, very pretty color. It's a herbaceous perennial, just like the other Baptisia. It blooms May and June, so it's got a shorter bloom time, but in native plants, there's plants that bloom continually. So we have early bloomers, mid bloomers, which this is considered kind of an early mid, and then we have late, like the asters. This one gets about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, and it takes on more of a shrubby appearance instead of the vase shape like the Baptisia australis we just looked at in the blue. The seed pods on this one are even supposed to be showier than the other Baptisia. So that's definitely a plus. I like that look in the garden when the seed pods, you know, remain. Butterfly bush. Everybody knows about buddleia, but look at this one. Have you ever seen a yellow buddleia? Honeycomb Yellow. Outstanding shrub. I planted this last year. I mean, it's such a pretty name too, Honeycomb Yellow. You'll see the middle picture. It has a very nice shape. It's about 5 to 7 feet is what they say. My particular one got about 5 in full sun, and about 4 to 5 wide. You need to leave room for it for sure. It is a vigorous, deciduous shrub, so it's going to grow, very, very well for you. Butterflies and bees and hummers all go because the blossoms are fragrant. So not only do they enjoy it and are attracted to them, but we also get to enjoy that aesthetic odor from them. They have gracefully arching branches, so they're not going to be upright. They're going to be kind of flowing down. The lance-shaped leaves are kind of gray-green, which makes them an interesting color in the garden. It's sweetly scented, and the flowers are kind of a yellow, creamy yellow. They make a good cut flower. This is one that it stays very compact, and you want to prune it early in the season. I prune mine about the end of February because that way it'll have all new growth and it'll be nice and fresh. And who doesn't love these beautiful racemes? Yellow, amazing. Cestrum. Oh, I love cestrum. This is the auriculatum orange peel. Orange peel is one that I have grown for, probably the last 10 years, and it gets rather large. The orange peel is a zone 7 dieback, so it is perennial, but it's going to die back to the ground like a herbaceous plant, but the woody stalks remain. So I go in about the end of February and cut those stalks down to the ground, and then they begin to come up green, from the root zone. It gets about 6 feet tall by 4 feet wide. I have this on the side, both sides of my front garden, and I have it placed, and you want to keep this in mind, where you can see the hummers because it's loaded with hummingbirds. I can see it from inside the house. And it is, the blooms are fragrant. Some people say that these trumpet blooms only have fragrance in the evening. I found that they did during the whole day. There's no pest at all on this plant. There's no maintenance on this plant. It thrives in the hot weather. And some people may call this a jessamine or a jasmine, but it really, truly is not. But very, very pretty flower. Look at that right picture. Don't you just love that? Okay, who doesn't love a Gara? The Gara plant this year we're featuring is the hot pink. And the hot pink is going to be, it's that plant that presents its blooms on the end of the stems that look like butterflies dancing in the wind. It has excellent branching in this hot pink variety. It's about 12 to 18 inches tall. It loves sun. It's a native. It's a pollinator plant. These shorter flower stems on this hot pink, they provide clump-forming star-shaped flowers, dark pink, and they have red-tinged foliage on this particular plant. The hot pink variety is going to look a little darker than the whirling butterflies, which is the one on the right. It is also called the bee blossom plant, the Indian feather, the wand flower, because the blossoms look like they're floating on the end of a wand. It's native in southern Texas and Louisiana, but it does so good here. The flowers on it are, they're just the tips, they're held on the tips of this long dark stem. And one interesting thing about the whirling butterflies is put it where you want it originally because it has a long taproot and it's really hard to move. These bright white flowers with red sepals just pop in the garden. I love this look of the whirling butterflies Gara. Brand new, Hibiscus coccineus. This is the Texas Blue Star hibiscus. It comes in a red version, which is a very moisture-loving, large, striking, star-shaped red bloom. It comes in this red and the crimson and the white. It is native in the southern United States. It will die back here in Oklahoma in the winter, but then it comes right back out. Some people call it a swamp hibiscus or a scarlet rose mallow. And the reason is because you can plant this if you have a low place in the garden. It likes to be planted in water. That's why it's called the swamp. So I know a lot of people that say, hey, what can I plant by this low gate? This is a great plant for that, and it'll be blooming, but it does need sun. The leaves on this plant look just like marijuana leaves. So I'm not even going to go there, but it could be interesting conversation in the garden. Hollyhock, kind of an old timer. This is the French hollyhock, the Malva sylvestris. It comes in purple. Lovely in the garden. Hummingbirds love this plant. It's a pollinator plant for sure. It loves sun, but it'll take some shade. It's from the mallow family, 2 to 3 inch lavender to purple blooms. Boy, I wish they were 3 feet. It has a profuse display of color all summer. It's a very showy plant, 36 inches tall by 30 wide. So this may be one you want to stake. If you put it out of the wind, it usually doesn't need to be staked. Butterfly, bees, and hummingbirds love it. Sometimes it's a short-lived perennial, but it does reseed well. And the blooms are seen all summer long in the same, just profuse blooms. Pretty color. Lantana. Who doesn't love lantana that's perennial, that comes back? The Lantana Camara is the pink and yellow variety, one of my favorites. It attracts butterflies, and it goes from late spring to frost. It dies back sometimes, but it will be woody many times here in Oklahoma, about 1 to 3 feet tall and wide. Very fast grower. The foliage is fragrant on this lantana, like on some others too, but on the perennial one, it definitely is. It likes a little protection in the wintertime. Again, it's the right plant in the right place. I sometimes will mulch mine, but I do have it on the west side next to the house, the brick wall, and so that helps it definitely go through the winter. The second one is the Lantana horrida, which is the orange variety. Also very, very striking, depending on what color palette that you're using in the garden. If you're going with oranges or going with pinks, this again is the perennial Lantana horrida orange. We have sold this before in our plant sale. Very, very popular. Very nice. This plant probably is one of the easiest ones because if you plant it somewhere where it's dry and it doesn't get a lot of water and you don't overwater it, it does the best. It's a great plant for pollinators. It's called gay feather or snake root. It is a native plant. It's about 36 to 48 inches high. So you want to allow for that tall. And it also attracts bees and butterflies like crazy. And this particular one, I was going to just mention our speaker next month is going to be speaking to us about the native Liatris here in Oklahoma. And this is one that he probably will be mentioning, but there's about 7 total. So good, it'll be a good speaking message next month. Mexican hat. This is just fun to have because it's so fun to say. Retibita colonifera. Yeah, what's that? It's a Retibita. How fun is that? This is a really cool sun pollinator native. It's sometimes called the prairie coneflower, which you can see how it looks. It's branched. The branched leafy part of the bottom is very, very intense with leaves. However, the top stalk, which bears about 3 to 7 of the yellow or yellow, red, and brown little sombreros, have very few leaves. The sombrero is supposed to be shaped, thus it gets its name, Mexican hat. It's supposed to be shaped like a sombrero that they wore at fiestas. So kind of fun. Some people call it sombrero plant. The flower heads are about 1.5 inches to 3 inches tall. It has very feathery leaves, grows and blooms from May through October. But that's with moisture. If it gets real dry, it'll die back. So this is one thing to make on your notes, that it likes moisture. Another good thing, this repels deer. Good one for those people who have some acreage. Mexican petunia, the Virilia simplex, comes in purple and white, grows very, very well. This one is a plant that will attract pollinators for sure. The bloom color on the purple is lovely. It's a lovely kind of violet blue. It thrives in shade, sun, and poor soil. So this guy is going to go. A lot of people think this is invasive. I have not found that to be, but then I mulch, so that may keep it from reseeding. But some people just think it really, really thrives. And so just be careful with that. The trumpet-shaped blooms are in clusters at the tip of the stem. The cylindrical seed capsules on this particular plant, and this is where I think it gets its the idea that it spreads. They call the capsules explosive dihiscence, and that's a cool word that means the seeds go everywhere, like 3 miles. So that is something you want to watch out for on this one, but it's just so pretty. And if you can put it in an area where it can spread, it's wonderful. This is the white and the purple, 2 different colors. Who doesn't love the Perovskia, Russian sage? Atriplycifolia? That's another fun word to impress your friends. Wonderful plant. Do you love the color? Look at the bloom in the center. This plant is sometimes, well, it's always been, let me say this, it's always been the Aromatic until just recently, and they're talking about changing it and putting it in the Salvia yangai family. And that just has to do with people who like to change names. But this is a sun pollinator. Hummingbirds like it. It's 16 to 18 inches tall. And it performs best in full sun. If you put it in shade, you'll see it start getting lanky and opening up in the center. It likes really hot garden strips, like if you have a skinny little garden or the mailbox garden. This is wonderful for that because it's going to provide food for pollinators. It's also fragrant, and we know that the name Perovskia was a name taken from a Russian general. So really, really fun. It's herbaceous. Or a sub-shrub, so it'll die back maybe to the woodiness. The silver gray foliage is just very attractive, and the blossoms are fragrant. This is a plant that I just love in the garden. I think everybody can use one of these in a hot, sunny spot. Turk's cap, popular seller last year. Isn't that a pretty plant? This is definitely a native. It comes from the fact that the blooms look like a little Turk's cap. It is sometimes called a swamp hibiscus. The red one of the Turk's cap is amazing, and I didn't really believe this, so I tried it out last year. It being a pollinator plant, it will grow in sun and shade, and I thought, yeah, big deal. But it actually bloomed in the shade. So I was very impressed. This is another one that you want to cut back to 6 inches in spring. It is a native, attracting all the pollinators. It puts on little tiny fruit that does not reseed or anything, but they're called manzanitas. And it's like a little red apple. So it's a real interesting, fun plant. It is also a host plant that we know is food for the butterfly caterpillar of the white skipper butterfly. Gets about 3 to 5 feet tall and about 3 to 4 feet wide. I think this is a fabulous plant, cutting back into February. Veronica. Everybody loves Veronica. This is a spike speedwell. And look at the name. Is that not fun? Spicata red fox. Yeah, what is that in your garden? That's red fox. It is a sun pollinator plant, attracts butterflies, about 12 to 15 inches tall and wide. Good clump forming, which is great for Veronica. Very compact, which is also a desired trait. It has a fuchsia pink bloom mid to late summer. Very, very pretty. These are fun to rub your hands over from the bottom up. They're very, very soft. And they bloom on their little raceme from the bottom up. So they open up at the bottom first. So pollinators have a long time, about 5 weeks, to feed off of this particular plant for nectar and pollen. If you keep it consistently moist, and it'll take a little bit of light shade, but it's pest and disease free, and it's bunny resistant. The bunnies don't eat it. Spicata red fox. White veined Dutchman pipe, Aristolochia fimbriata. This is a ground cover, and it is a very, very interesting ground cover because it has in the green leaves, you see that it has little white veins. So it's very, very attractive. But the thing that makes it the most attractive is not only is it a pollinator plant that'll grow in sun and part shade, but it is a hardy. And so it will die back some in the wintertime, but it'll come back every year. But the main thing is the little bloom on this plant was named after the Dutchman pipe, which was called a meerschaum, and it's a little smoking pipe from Europe. And so the blossom is really, really unusual. They're kind of inconspicuous. You see mainly the veined leaves, and they are heart-shaped, and they're green with that showy silver veining. This is a great plant to put in a shady area. It takes sun and part shade, but if you put it in areas that are kind of bare and ugly in the winter, it'll hold itself there, through the winter months so that you have some ground cover. So it likes AM sun and PM shade. And of course, this is the host plant for the pipe vine swallowtail, which you see on your screen. And it's really interesting because she will consume the leaves as a host plant in the summer, but then she lays her eggs, they overwinter, and the emerging caterpillars in the spring will eat the roots to survive on. So I thought that was really, really interesting. This is a trailing plant, so it looks good with a pop of color and shade also. The white veined Dutchman pipe. Nepeta catnip. This is a fun plant. Does it really attract cats to the garden? Yeah, it really does. There's something called the pedalactone that's in the leaves. And what it is, it affects them to make them kind of, it's like smoking weed, man. It's they kind of get a little silly, and it affects about 70% of the cats. 30% don't care, and it never affects kittens. So go figure. I don't know what that is. It affects domestic cats that way, and lions and leopards and jaguars. Oh my. So if you live in a semi-tropical area, then you might be attracting those cats also. This is a close relative to the mint. It grows well in zone 3 to 9. It's a short-lived perennial, but the bloom is great for pollinators. And what's so cool about this is that in 2000, Iowa State patented this nepeta because they said that it repelled cockroaches, mosquitoes, ticks, mites, spiders, and termites. And it also attracts beneficial insects. So that sounds like a win-win. And if you don't like kitty cats, then this is probably not one for you to plant. Let's have a gander at some of our milkweeds real quickly. This year, we are featuring several milkweeds that we've done before, and then some new ones also. We are doing, again, the Asclepius Angustifolia, which is the Arizona milkweed. These all take sun, of course, and I just wanted to show you pictures of each one because a lot of times people get them mixed up about, well, what color flower does it have? So make a note, the Arizona milkweed is going to be a white flower. And this, of course, is not a perennial. The swamp milkweed, or the Asclepius incarnata, is definitely a perennial. This is the swamp, and it likes full sun, which most of our milkweeds do. But look at the blossom on that one. This one comes back year after year. I've had it. This is about my 5th year for them to come back. People say, are they called swamp because they have to have water? They like water. I plant one near my sunny bird bath. They don't have to have it. But it's one that, they're not going to shy away from water. Another one is the Asclepius perennis. This is aquatic. Look at that bloom on there. Very, very pretty. Some people use this as a bog plant, planting it near, water sources in your yard. Very, very pretty blossom, like sun. And it is aquatic milkweed. This one is new this year, Asclepius speciosa. Look at the blossoms on there. It's a star-shaped blossom. It's also called showy milkweed because of the rose flowers. It is one that is a very stout grower, so it's going to be short and not quite so tall and spindly as some of the tropical varieties. It's called a pubescent milkweed because it has a hairy stem. So very, very interesting. That is the showy. Common milkweed is new this year with us also. It's the Syriaca, and it loves full sun. It makes large cones on the plant. It has really pretty pink, purple flowers. You see the cones there in your top right. It has an attractive odor. However, this milkweed, since it's called common, the Syriaca, make a note that this common one loves disturbed soil. So if you plant it in a garden that you till, it's going to spread more rapidly to the point of invasive. In meadows where there's grass or there's other wildflowers, it's not disturbed site, so it doesn't spread so quickly. But keep in mind, you want to especially make sure where you plant this one because it loves disturbed soil. And last but not least is the Asclepius Tuberosa. Very, very pretty, happy color. Orange, this is the one that's more shrub-like, and it's called the butterfly milkweed. So I'm hoping that that'll kind of clarify some of the colors for you on the milkweed. Okay, we're almost through. Hang on just for a second more. We're going to talk a little bit about a new tomato that we're featuring called Brandywine Pink, which is an heirloom. The fruit is actually pink. It's an indeterminate, so it's going to keep vining and vining, so it's going to need some support. It's a beef-style size slicer tomato, matures 80 to 100 days, and that's important to veggie gardeners. It has an intense tomato flavor, a very vigorous vine. The fruit is rosy pink and not red, and it has something unusual called people call it the potato leaf foliage, and it's a normal tomato, but it does have a leaf that looks like a potato leaf. Brandywine Pink. First year for us to promote our strawberries. This is the All-Star, which means it's June bearing. It's not ever bearing, so it has the major flush of fruit early in late spring or early summer. It's got the fruit is very, very red. It's kind of a orange red. In fact, late spring, early summer. It's a glossy, firm fruit. And it's really fun to plant this one in the garden because these aren't commercially grown because their skin is more fine, I guess, and it's damaged in shipping. So if you have your own in your yard, then you'll have your very own all-star fruit because a lot of people, don't sell these in the grocery store. It likes full sun, moist, well-drained soil. It does great in raised beds and even in containers with the different little fronds coming over the side. One special note about this all-star that I saw everywhere I read about it was that you always want to plant the crown even with the surface of the soil on this one. A little bit more important than some of the other strawberries. All-star. Peppers. This is a golden wonder bell. No heat. It's a mild banana pepper. It is an heirloom. And you notice that it's got that pretty golden color for salads. No heat to mild. It's a golden version of the red California bell pepper. The fruit are about 5 inches by 4 inches, so they're going to be the big ones. They are thick-walled, very sweet and mild. Matures 62 to 73 days. It has 0 Scovilles on this chart, so it's going to be tasty and sweet. However, this one is called the pepper Hungarian Hot Wax, hot banana. And they say it's mild to mild hot, but it is going to be the long banana-shaped waxy pepper. Sometimes they say the waxy ones are hotter. I don't know. It's good for frying and stuffing and pickling. And the pepper, all these colors you see, they grow from pale yellow to deep golden orange to cherry red. And as the pepper changes color, so does the heat. So if you want these to be less hot, pick them when they're yellow. If you like them, really hot and you got a hot mouth, then you can handle those 1,000 to 15,000 soil heat units in the red Hungarian hot wax. So last but not least, I always like to say something about we garden with a purpose and we have things to consider. Do we want to plant something like this, even though it's very attractive and neat? Or do we want to garden with a purpose? What you plant does matter.